Issue related to e-learning that my partner Aaron and I are researching is the cost and funding of e-learning courses. This issue was of particular interest to me because throughout my time in HRD, I have heard multiple times that e-learning is the most efficient method of delivering learning content, whether it's for a course on a college campus or for an employee training program. However, I never truly understood what makes an e-learning course cost efficient. And how does the organization determine that it is better than face-to-face instruction in terms of cost? During this presentation, I will present information regarding the importance of calculating the cost of e-learning to determine whether or not it is the best route, and I will also provide formulas. Now that I have told you why I was interested in the topic of the cost of e-learning, I'm now going to talk about what other professionals in the field have had to say about calculating the cost of e-learning. So I'm going to start off first with what makes e-learning cost effective or efficient. Top administrators and stakeholders are mostly concerned with the bottom line when it comes to training programs or college courses, meaning they want to know if they are getting the best results for the money they have invested. And because it's essential to have these top administrators on board with the e-learning program or course, HRD professionals must prove that e-learning courses are most cost efficient and effective than face-to-face instruction. According to two professors here at the University of Illinois, Professor Wentling and Professor Park, a learning method is relatively cost efficient in the case that its outputs cost less per unit of input, and it's cost effective if outputs not only spend less cost than others, but also are relevant to the learner's needs. Now I'm going to move on and discuss why it is important for organizations to calculate the cost of implementing e-learning programs. Because it is one of the major factors affecting the successful implementation and longevity of an e-learning program. In Chapter 6 of Bates' book, he discusses the importance of calculating the cost to determine whether or not the investment is sound. While one would think that this would be the first step in the project management process, he states that this is often where instructional designers err because they spend too much time developing content and not tracking the costs that are being incurred. Bates argues that instructional designers must evaluate the fixed and the variable costs that will be incurred. For example, a new piece of equipment is going to have a fixed cost. However, the cost associated with increased enrollment is going to be a variable cost. The more students that enroll in the program, the more resources are going to be needed to make sure that that student has what he or she needs to successfully complete the course. In addition to the costs that are directly related to the development of the program, designers must also calculate the indirect costs. For example, higher utility costs from the power that the technology is drawing or the use of facilities that the program is going to be housed in. And so after describing these various types of costs, Bates gave a chart and an equation that professionals can use to determine the benefits of investing in e-learning versus face-to-face instruction. The calculator assesses the cost of both methods over their lifespan and then compares the difference. What I like about the chart that Bates gives is that it calculates the cost of an e-learning program over an expanded amount of time. But I found a quicker method that was more simpler to use in the article written by Professor Wentling and Park. And there are three essential formulas that you can utilize to calculate the cost of a program. The first one is the CBR, which is the cost to benefit ratio. And essentially it is the program benefits divided by the program costs. So it's a very simple and straightforward formula that you can utilize to determine whether or not e-learning is going to be the best route for your organization. Another formula is the ROI formula, which is the return on investment formula. And this is essentially the percentage of net program benefits divided by the program's cost. And so the percentage of the net program benefits are the benefits minus the cost of the program. And then finally, the third formula that was discussed in Wentling and Park's article was the break-even analysis. And so in the break-even analysis, the number of students that offset the fixed cost of the e-learning program. When the fixed cost of the e-learning program or course is equal to the revenue dollars of student enrollment via tuition, then you have reached a break-even point. And so this analysis shows how many students are needed to enroll in the program or course to break even or turn a profit. And so I found that the formulas introduced in the Wentling and Park article were more concrete, or I would say more simpler for the everyday practitioner to utilize than the chart, the extensive chart that was presented in Bates' book. However, I do value that chart because it evaluates the cost of the program over a long period of time. So now that I have discussed how you go about calculating the cost of an e-learning program, I'm going to discuss what does all this mean for the organization. Well, essentially, if practitioners calculate the cost of developing an e-learning program from the ground up, they may realize that the outcome is not worth the investment or fits the budget of the organization. Or they may realize that it does. And so from there, they are able to decide whether outsourcing the work is more cost efficient or if buying off the shelf would be more cost efficient. In an article written by Laura Francis and Randy Amello, Buy versus Build, a Battle of Needs, the issue of whether or not an organization should purchase a commercial e-learning program or develop their own was discussed. The authors claim that the three deciding factors are the needs of the organization, the resources available to the organization, and whether or not the content calls for uniqueness. While I think that this article brings up great points about how organizations could consider outsourcing the work of designing an e-learning program or purchasing a commercial one, I believe that it oversimplifies the factors attributing to such a decision. The article simply states some of the costs associated with distance learning programs. And I think that Bates does a more thorough job of explaining how each cost factors into an equation that can be used, as well as the article written by Professor Wentling and Professor Park. But essentially, once organizations determine how much it would cost them to invest in e-learning, they can then move forward with discussing how to raise the funds needed to support such a program, which my partner Erin will discuss in her presentation.